Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Aztecs by John Lucarati, directed by John Crockett. In my personal opinion, this is not only one of the best Doctor Who stories ever made, but it is the best first Doctor story. I absolutely love this story. It's full of intrigue, it's got a lot of historical elements to it. But let's diverse and actually delve deep into the story. So this story is a pure historical. Well, now, we've talked about this with Marco Polo, also written by John Lucarati, where there's no sci-fi elements or monsters, and it's all about exploring a history element. In Marco Polo is about the life of Marco Polo and his adventures in Asia. This time we're delving into the Aztecs. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Aztecs were these people in early Mexico, I believe, and they were these very religious group of people. They used to sacrifice people for their gods, and they used to believe that these sacrifices would let control like the weather, like if it rained or if it was sunny or if there was no drought, it was because nobody was dying. So this story explores that element. So our story starts off with our TARDIS crew, the Doctor, Susan, Ian and Barbara, land in a dark room with a corpse in it. Now Barbara, being a history teacher, knows everything about the Aztecs as far as we know, and she can piece together that this is like an early century Aztec just by going by the jewellery of the corpse. And she puts one of the jewelleries on, and she has a nice discussion with Susan about the Aztecs and how she's very into the Aztec history. So this story is really she's on the front cover, Barbara. Now, as I've said before, I found it surprising that Barbara actually is a fan favourite companion. And with this story, you can clearly see why. This story is all about her. But let's get back into the story. So the Doctor and Ian then come out of the TARDIS and they open this door, which they don't realise is one-sided. Now, Barbara goes in first, and Susan goes to the TARDIS and summons them out. And they discover that the Aztecs, because Barbara put that bracelet on her arm, they believe that she is the Ataxa, a resurrected high priest person, and they believe that she's some sort of either a god or somebody who speaks for the gods. So she is very highly seen upon by the people of the Aztecs. It is here that we are introduced to two Aztec individuals. Ortlock, the High Priest of Knowledge, he was a very wise man who very trusts Barbara a lot, and is like her right hand man. And you got the Atoxa, the High Priest of Sacrifice. Now this guy is basically the villain of the story, and I don't know, something about the guy who plays him he's just spot on as a great villain. He doesn't have much to depth with. However, he does get a lot of scenes where he is very intimidating. And something about his look as well. He's got this weird painted line across his face like that. It really exaggerates his mouth. And something about it it's just something really works. And the guy who plays him, John Ringham, does a fantastic job at playing this villain. He's exaggerated, but not enough that it's cartoonish or campy, but it's not subtle enough that it becomes dull or uninteresting. It's just spot on. What happens then is that it starts off all nice and tidy. Barbara, because they believe that she is the Ataxa, lets all of the people, all the TARDIS crew around the Aztec city, and they first of all they seem to enjoy it, but and the Doctor befriends this woman in this garden, which is basically like an old people's home, and he befriends this one woman, and William Hartnell and this person, I can't remember her name, I do apologise, but their chemistry really works well, and that will build up later on in the story to be a really funny gag. But there you go. So the Atoxa, believing that Ian is a sort of like a god who worships the Ataxa, because none of them seen where they came from, makes Ian the leader of their armies. Now there's this other guy, who I can't remember the name at the moment, I do apologise. He gets really jealous of Ian, and he challenges Ian to a sort of battle of their determination. And there's a great scene where they're explaining about their fighting styles, and this guy, he'll just beat down his enemies with strength. And Ian says something about strategy, and what he does is he could beat somebody with just his thumb and tactic and the act of surprise. And you're like, part of you is like, I mean, clearly you can't beat anyone with a thumb. And then he asks that guy to pick up a weapon, and before he can turn around, he does a nerve pinch, and it's like, that's really cool. And he actually then takes him down and all that. Then the story gets really interesting, for you see, because they believe Barbara is this mythical being, she has to be here to be a sort of leader in this sacrifice. And Ian, because now he is like this a higher up in the army, has to actually hold down the person being sacrificed, and the tension just builds. Now Barbara, I love Jacqueline Hill's performance here. She's got a very emotionless face for most of it, but it really works here. You can see she's really down, and you can see that this time traveling adventure, this hard life isn't working for her. You can see it just in her face that she is depressed. And she comes up with this great idea that because she knows the Aztecs as well, she knows that not only there's this evil, this sacrifice, but there's also a lot of good of the Aztecs. They've got a lot of nice culture, they're very civilized in certain departments, and they've got this wonderful culture and fashion about them. So she comes up with this idea that if she stops the sacrifice and proves to everybody that it will rain or it will be sunny without the guy dying, then she can keep everything, she can change history and keep all the good of the Aztecs, but destroy all the evil. That's just a brilliant concept for a sci-fi show. This is the first story where the time-traveling element plays a huge part in the storyline, and the Doctor has a massive argument with her, which comes with that really famous line where he says, "You can't change history, not one line." That comes from this story. Now, they have a debate, and you can see that it's really getting down to Barbara, and she sits down and she puts her head down and she's like, I stop all this bickering. Now, the Doctor has bickered with our TARDIS crew before, as in The Edge of Destruction and Unearthly Child. But here what he does is he actually sits down and he apologises. Now remember before he was too stubborn to apologise to Barbara, and now he is, and he is like, well, he understands that it's a really hard moment for her. That was just beautiful to watch. That he's gone from this guy who wouldn't be that trusted with these companions to actually be treating them as sort of like his daughter. I see Barbara and the Doctor like father and daughter in this. I just love their chemistry, and you see William Hartley puts his arm on her shoulder, and it's just a very little sweet moment. So that scene just puts a smile on my face, and when he apologizes, especially when you've seen him in the last stories, you really get the connection of these two characters. So the sacrifice starts, and Barbara tells them, no, this is not how it's going to happen. He will not be sacrificed. And this guy, he turns to her and is like, you've dishonored me. And the high priest of sacrifice is like, well, show that you are determined. And then he kills himself. He jumps off the building and dies. So he died anyway, without her, even with her interference. And it starts to rain. And this, because Barbara interfered, this guy, the guy who controls the sacrifice sin, he basically works out that she is not the attacker. And this is the brilliant cliffhanger of part 1 has him turn into the camera, and his face is just right up like this, and he goes, "This is not the attacker. This is a false goddess." And that just strikes, because he's right. She's not the attacker. She is just somebody who's just come into this civilization and is trying to change them. And technically, he's in the right here. I mean, obviously he's in the wrong because he's trying to kill people, but he is right about Barbara. He does have a huge advantage over our TARDIS crew because he knows a lot about the culture, and he knows that all these people believe him, that sacrificing is the way to go. So that makes him such a great villain to watch. And him versus Barbara, every time they're in a scene, it's just them two talking and bantering. It's just so much tension that just go watch this. This is a brilliant story. I mean, this is just part 1 I'm talking about here. We got 3 more episodes to go. God, I fucking love this story. Anyway, Barbara gets pretty down and is like, well, I didn't change anything. And the doctor feels really bad, and he's trying to talk to the woman that he was talking to earlier, if he knows anybody about the building, and see if he can get into the building. And she says that she knows the guy who built the building is dead, but his son might know something about it. So the doctor asks if he can meet him. Now, the guy who's going to be the guy in the armies, who's going to control the armies, he challenges Ian to a battle. But obviously Ian, he thinks that Ian is stronger than him because he took him down with his thumb. But Ian clearly is like, if I take him 1-to-1, this is going to be an unfair fight. So you can see that he really doesn't want to be in this fight. And obviously, you know, Ian's a goodie. He doesn't want to fight at all. And this guy, now this is really cool, because you think at the start of it, it seems like it was going to be this conflict would be a battle of wits versus a battle of strength. But that's not what happens. It turns out that this guy is the son of the builder, the person who made the building. So he comes up with this plan that he will help the doctor by giving him the blueprints, which don't actually exist, if he helped him in a battle, which he says is not to the death, and he doesn't tell him that it's Ian. That's just a great idea that he uses the doctor against Ian, and the doctor comes up with this plan that he gets like a leaf with a needle in it, and it's because of the way that the words, I don't know anything about plants, but basically if he scratches his enemies with this, it will make them weak so he can take them down. And that's just perfect, because it's just like the doctor, it's the doctor's fault that this happens, and this guy used his wit. He learned from Ian, because he said about, Ian was saying that cunning is always better than surprising your enemies than just brute force. And this guy then goes along with it. He learns from his enemies. This is such a great villain, secondary villain to our main villain. Basically, he's like a henchman. So, what a great foe for Ian. Now, Susan, she gets a lesson from the High Priest of Knowledge about their culture and stuff, and this might be the weakest element of the story. Like, you don't really. This would have been a great time to show a little bit more of the culture of the Aztecs, but the scenes are so short and they don't really explain it that well. Like, they always cut it into like the end of her lesson, so I thought that was a bit of an missed opportunity. However, there's a great bit where they're talking about, like, you can only look at people unless it's your future husband, and there's this debate about Susan and who she should marry, who she wants to be or not, who was made for her, made for forced marriages. So there's a topic for you. Tocqueville uses this to his advantage. He gets this guy who is going to be sacrificed to basically gets to choose whoever he wants to marry, and he sees Susan and he wants to marry her, but Susan refuses, and that's a big no-go in Aztec culture. So she gets arrested, and everything is just messed up for our TARDIS crew. So the woman that the Doctor was helping, she confesses that she likes the Doctor a lot, and she makes these cocoa beans, and the Doctor doesn't really know what's going on, thinks that it's just a nice gesture, so he helps her make it. What he doesn't realise is that in Aztecs, when you help a lady with cocoa beans, it's basically being proposed. So he accidentally proposed to this woman, which was a very funny. The scene where he realises that he's accidentally proposed to this woman is absolutely hilarious. This is a great time to talk about John Crockett's direction. My God, this story looks stunning. John Crockett has a very great eye for close-ups. He always has two actors close up like this, and he always has just a keen eye for people's faces. Every time there's a close-up, it just looks absolutely stunning, and he always uses elements like somebody in the background looking at our characters who are talking, and you can see that they are thinking about, you can see in their faces how determined they are about these conversations, whether it would be Ian looking at the guy who's going to control the armies, and you can see in Ian's face that he's worried, or the Doctor's face when he's behind Barbara, or the guy the High Priest of Sacrifice, when he looks behind Barbara and you just see his face and you can see he's utter disgust that this woman is basically pretending to be this false goddess and is basically taking their people for a spin. So Ian has the fight with this guy, and just before the guy gets the needle out, the Doctor runs in and tells Ian not to get scratched. By that point, the guy actually scratches him on the wrist. Now this fight gets really intense. I'm afraid the actual fight itself is pretty bland. It just seems like a lot of hugging and stuff, but I think the actors do as good as they can here. This is 1960. Fighting in TV wasn't that well developed yet, so I'll give this story a leeway on that. Barbara then interferes, and the guy who distrusts her says, if you are a true goddess, you could stop this fight, no problem, so do it. And then that leads into our next cliffhanger. That is just brilliant. It's like, what does she do? Because if she doesn't bring out a miracle, then she proves that she isn't a false god. So what actually happens is that she puts a knife to the guy's neck and says that if the guy doesn't leave Ian alone, then he will kill her. Now this does what he asked to stop the fight. However, because it wasn't a miracle, a lot of people are losing their faith in Barbara, and that puts the entire crew in danger, because if they believe that Barbara is not who she says she is, they're going to kill all of our TARDIS crew. However, Barbara does have an ally in the High Priest of Knowledge, and them two have a very great chemistry here. Jacqueline Hill and that guy, I can't remember his name, I do apologise, really work well with each other. They both seem a bit fed up with the Aztec life, but they both got nice hearts, they both care, and they both just want to see good in the city. So during this time, the doctor and that woman he proposed by accident are talking, and she reveals that the guy who built the building went missing and was left with this piece that was in the courtyard, and the doctor suspects that he went missing because there was a tunnel that led it into the building. It's a bit strange. It's not really explained well, but it's just a small detail. I don't think it matters too much, especially how the dramatics in this story are very well. So I'll give it a pass on that. And then Ian gets into the building. The doctor has to move this block, and he can't because he's too old. Ian does, and then Ian goes into the thing. But that guy who commands the army spots it and puts the block back and tells the doctor that he has to put it back because otherwise the water will fill up and will destroy the garden, so he has to put it back, leaving into our last cliffhanger where Ian is trapped in a tunnel filling with water. Now I think that's the weakest of the cliffhangers so far, however it's still a pretty good cliffhanger. So Ian finds a secret door that leads back into the room at the first where they came in, and he leaves a rope so that they can open the door later. Now, so that solves one of their problems. However, they still need to save Susan, who is going to be punished for denying the guy to be his wife. So Ian decides that he's going to try and break her out. But however, when he does get close to her, they find the guy, the High Priest of Knowledge, knocked on the floor with Ian's bat. Now, the guards come up and suspect that Ian was the one who knocked him out. And because the High Priest of Knowledge didn't see who attacked him, he also thinks it's Ian, and also doubts the Barbara, and his faith is absolutely lost. So what he does is he leaves an amulet to the woman who has proposed to the doctor, and basically tells her to try and rescue Susan, because he knows that Susan is good anyway, and he goes into the wilderness. So he's basically he's done with the Aztec society. He is fed up with this. He's like, I'm done. So she puts out an amulet to let Susan go. She is trapped now with Ian, and as she's discussing with to the guard, Ian knocks him at the back of the head. They go and run to take Susan to safety, and Ian puts on the armour. So Susan meets up with the rest of our TARDIS crew. They try and open a door. All the Aztecs realise that, all this rubbish is false. And then Ian comes out with the guard trying to protect our heroes as they're trying to get the door open. And then the guy who's going to control the armies comes up the stairs in this very warrior-like costume. And then what they do is that they take the armor out, very Star Wars-y-ish. This was like a decade before Star Wars. And then they get their weapons out, they start fighting. Now this is where the last fight between them, though dramatically wise and story wise, it really works. It was let down by a very weak fight. However, here, with a lot more cut in and a lot more action and a lot more different camera angles, the battle here really works. And you can see when it hits, it's really hard on the shields. And there's a great shot of Ian on a leg, near a ledge, and you see it from by his ankles through his legs, and you see the other guy about to come up with with his bat, and it's just a very great shot fight. And then when Ian knocks him down the stairs, I don't think it's clear if he killed him or not, but I don't think, seeing as he went down the stairs, I don't think so. And Ian and Doctor, they all leave, they went through the door, and they all go through, and then the guy who's going to sacrifice is like, enough, they can't do any harm, and then he gets the knife and he's praying to the sun gods, and he's about to sacrifice this guy. That's how the story ends, with a sacrifice. Our team have lost. They did not win this battle. Wow. And there's a great little moment where Barbara is saying that she didn't change anything. What's the point of time travel if you can't change history? That's just a beautiful moment. And the Doctor basically explains that you can't change history, but you can change like a one man's life. Like the High Priest of Knowledge, he believed all this rubbish about sacrifices and stuff, and because of Barbara, his mind was changed. And the Doctor is like, you may not have changed history, but you changed one man for the better. And it leaves on that somber note that maybe nothing really changed, not really, but maybe just a little bit. And then there's this great moment where she takes the amulet off and she goes in the TARDIS. And then the Doctor, he puts up the coin thing that woman gave him. And he puts it down. He turns to the TARDIS. He turns back, he picks it up, and then he runs back into the TARDIS. I just love that little moment. That's how the story ends. So yeah, in my opinion, this is one of the best Doctor Who stories. It's definitely my favourite William Hartnell story. I highly recommend it. There's nothing really to compare it to. I don't think this video even give it justice, if I must be honest with you. So that's the Aztecs. There's nothing more really I can say. I can't praise this enough. There's just something really iconic about it. I can remember the first time I watched it was back in 2013 when they showed one story for each Doctor. And they showed this for the first Doctor, and I was absolutely blown away. Do you know, like, you get those moments where you watch a film or a TV show episode, and you've seen something magical. Some people had it when they watched Terminator 2, and some people had it when they watched The Godfather. I had it on Doctor Who The Aztecs. That might be a bit sad, but I don't care. I love this story. Go watch it. So there you go, that's the Aztecs. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon, where we'll be talking about a little story not so loved by the fan community. What's my opinion on it? You'll have to wait and find out. So I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon.